What's up, guys, and welcome to the Level Health Podcast. Today, we're joined by Shannon Beer, health coach, mentor, and one half of the comprehensive coaching team, along with Dr. Fundero, who we spoke to in a previous episode. Josh and Shannon discussed the nuanced and inescapable topic of body image, so really what body image is and what all makes it up, as well as how social media and the fitness industry have impacted the way that we think about ourselves. She gives us some informative, practical advice for both professionals and everyday people that want to improve their health, potentially change the way they look or not, all while building their self-image and their relationship with food and exercise. We wanted to give a big thank you to Shannon for coming on our episode. You can find her on Instagram at @ShannonBeer_ or on her website, shannonlbeer.com. We'll have both of these linked in the description down below. For those of you that don't already know, our website, Level Health, is a directory, community, and network of qualified health and fitness professionals. We want to help create a space where clients and patients are able to find the right professional for them. If you haven't signed up already, go to levelhealth.net and set up your membership. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the episode.
All right, now, so you are the other half of the dynamic duo that is the comprehensive coaching and with Dr. Fundero. And then reading and hearing some of your background, it seems like you had a very interesting route to where you are now. Can you fill us in on how you ended up as a nutrition coach, living in Bali, and seemingly taking on some of the biggest problems in the health and fitness industries currently?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I didn't really know that I was interested in nutrition initially. And when I went to university, I went there to study law. Not because I necessarily wanted to be a lawyer, but just because I wanted to move out of home and I wanted to move somewhere else. And I thought, oh, if I went to uni, I could move to London. And what do I study if I'm going to go to uni? Well, I want to make it worthwhile, and law seems like a secure route. So I just ended up studying law, but in my second year, it kind of dawned on me that I wasn't particularly interested in taking it any further. And I remember my tutor actually gave us some advice, and he said that if you're not reading about these issues outside of your recommended reading, for your own interest, then you're probably in the wrong place. So I thought, I'm in the wrong place. I knew this already, but that's just confirmed. I'm definitely not supposed to be doing this. And then I thought, well, what am I interested in outside of, my lectures? And I was getting into nutrition. I think it was through the Sigma Nutrition podcast, how I first started just expanding my own understanding. And my intention behind that was I thought that, if I could improve my health, then I can improve my quality of life, just have the energy to do the things that I want to do each day. So the way that I got into that was through nutrition. And I heard on that podcast about Mac Nutrition Uni, which was an online course, only a year long as well, because that was my other hesitation. I didn't want to go back to uni once I'd graduated, just to learn more about nutrition. So I thought, if there's a way that I can do this in just a year and it's online, then I can follow through with my intentions to travel as well and kind of do the two at the same time. So after uni, I went traveling and was completing Mac Nutrition Uni. So I'm a MNU certified nutritionist. But then as I began to work with people, I realized that my intention, as I said, was to improve my health and my overall quality of life. And I realized, well, nutrition is just one tiny part of that. And actually, it's pretty simple. Like the things that are most important are quite simple. And learning more and more about the complex, topics in nutrition wasn't really enhancing my health or my quality of life in any way, and nor was it helping the people that I was working with. So I just started listening to them, I guess, and started to hear other things that they were concerned about, for example, like their appearance, and then thinking about, well, that seems to be holding this person back. How can I help with that? And I was just traveling at the same time and I guess exploring these different things. And then I met Gabrielle at, I think it was a conference in London, and then a few times over different places in the world. So I think we met up a few times in America and also Australia, started talking about different issues that we had been seeing being discussed in the industry. And I think I wrote an article on intuitive eating and she shared that. And then we were just discussing that more. And I guess we just planned to talk about some of these issues, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So we wrote one article which turned into like 4 articles, and then people were responding to that well and asking to hear more, and asking us if we were putting on webinars. So we were like, hey, we could probably do that. And then we kind of created a webinar series, and I guess comprehensive coaching was born from that, thinking about these seem to be the common issues that people face. This is how we've been approaching things so far, but I don't think it's working. We probably need some, to think about this a little bit more. And we're putting together a framework, I guess, just through our discussions, and then operationalizing and formalizing that framework through refinements from hearing from other professionals as well. We've just kind of been working on it since. It's just an ongoing process. And then when we did the webinar series, it seemed to go down pretty well, and people were asking for a community. So we thought, sure, we could do that too. And that's kind of how we ended up in this position. And as to how I got to Bali, I've just been traveling around for a little bit. Was getting locked down in Lisbon and thought, where can I go? And just, ended up here. And I guess I'm staying put for now.
Yeah, there's definitely worse spots. There's a lot to unpack there. But something that I keep coming, it's probably because we're talking so much about behavior change and things like that. The idea that the basics are pretty simple in terms of the physiology, the nutrition, it really is. There's not obviously it can get so complex, but you probably don't need to make it complex in order to apply it to people and help them make these changes. The framework that y'all have made has just been so incredibly valuable, because anytime, Eric Helms has the muscle and strength pyramids. That is kind of my framework for nutrition and exercise physiology. And then you can apply it to normal people as much as is appropriate. But once there's a framework there, you can kind of, be able to conceptualize things a little bit easier. For that Sigma nutrition episode, though, that you did, were you nervous for that being kind of where your roots in this came from?
I wasn't nervous to chat to Danny, because we've met a few times over the years. So I think I actually first met him like 3 or 4 years ago. But I was nervous in the sense that I just wanted to represent what we're doing, accurately and the best that I could. So that was kind of, I guess, at the back of my mind. But I feel quite comfortable talking about what it is that we're doing. So it's something that I really believe in. But I think when you believe in something, you also put that pressure on yourself too. So there was a bit of that for sure.
We try to have a charitable mindset for other people, but we don't apply that to ourselves. The idea of, or the thought of like not reading about law outside of class, that just sounds so obvious, but I think it's something that people kind of neglect to pay attention to, because with personal trainers, and specifically that's where I'm speaking from, you had to be willing to go home and research what's wrong or what's happening with your client outside of working hours. And that was a big differentiating factor that I saw between a quote unquote good trainer and a bad trainer, was just they're not willing to figure out problems, or as soon as they walk out of the gym door, it's over. Like they're no longer caring about that person. And I think Gabrielle said something, I'm going to misquote her here, but it made me think of something that I've always said. And that's, I kind of rent out real estate in my brain for people. You're not just selling a meal plan. You're not just selling a workout program. You're selling the cognitive and emotional space, I believe she said. And that just resonated with me so much, because that's really how I saw it. Like I was thinking about my clients day in and day out, because I know that's what it was going to take to be able to create change for these people. And then I look back and I'm like, man, I dropped the ball with so many people, because I wasn't being able to process ambivalence that in the way that I've learned from just a little bit of motivational interviewing. Like I could have read one book and I would have been worlds better, but I think everything you get exposed to stuff at the right time. And I've seen that time and time again. Would you agree with me that one of the most misunderstood issues in health and fitness currently is body image?
Yeah, for sure. Because I find that many clients, the majority of my clients come to me initially to make changes to their physique. And there's nothing wrong inherently like with that, but their reasons for doing so, I think, are, I guess, misplaced. So people want to change their bodies in order to improve their confidence. And unfortunately, the evidence suggests that simply changing your body composition doesn't guarantee that you're going to feel any better about yourself. And I think that we can sometimes feed into the issue with the fitness industry for sure, because we're promoting, here's my before and after of this client, they did so well, you're going to feel better once you've achieved the same result. Whereas actually our body image has so much more to do with how we think about ourselves, and our perceptions of ourselves are not necessarily accurate. I've worked with a number of people who are extremely lean and still view themselves as having too much body fat. And from an objective perspective, they're potentially on the lower end of a healthy weight range, physically, but they still feel like there's more to go. And then the question becomes, well, why? Why do you feel like making these changes to your physique is going to add anything to your life? And again, it's not to say that we can't ever do that. We can for sure, but just making sure that it doesn't affect other areas of our life as well, I think is extremely important. So for me, it seems like an obvious thing to explore, given that the majority of people are restricting their dietary intake in order to manipulate their body composition. So the two things, dietary restraint and body image, seem to go hand in hand. And that's actually how I came across the literature, was when I was looking into what makes dietary restraint flexible versus rigid. Like, it seems to be, it's not as clear as we may think. So what is the nuance behind that? And then body image seemed to be a huge mediating factor. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should learn more about this. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense as I was going into the research and seeing what I was seeing with my clients. So I think, going into the body image has been a huge game changer, just for helping people to improve overall, not just make these changes to their physique, but also make these kind of big mindset shifts, I think.
I don't think that you can get away. I mean, we're in a human-based industry. We work with other humans. So I don't think we can get away from the psychological side at all. Even if we want to kind of just ignore it, sweep it under the rug. It's just going to come back to bite us eventually. Before we go any further, though, can we actually start by just defining what body image is? How does it impact our self-image, how we feel as a person, well-being, health overall?
Yeah, for sure. So body image refers to essentially your experience of yourself. So the way that you perceive yourself, the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you think about yourself, and then also the behaviors that you engage in as a result of these things. So for example, someone with a negative body image may have high levels of body dissatisfaction, so not liking certain areas of their body. And as a result, they may hold themselves back from engaging in the things that are important to them. For example, not wanting to go out with your friends because you don't feel so good, or even engaging in restrictive dietary behaviors in order to change how you look. And when someone has a negative body image, it can have quite a large impact on their life. It really does impair someone's psychosocial functioning, so just their overall well-being. And by working on that, reducing someone's negative body image and also promoting a positive body image, because these are two distinct things. So a positive body image would be characterized by showing respect and appreciation towards your body and filtering out unhelpful influences. That is uniquely associated with well-being. So when I kind of, again, getting into the research, I realized that I was like, well, how can I help people reduce, a negative body image if they are displaying signs of that, and also promote a positive body image? So I'm not just taking someone from negative to neutral, but really promoting positive body image, just to, again, really improve someone's quality of life. Because when you think about culture and society that we're faced with, we are constantly comparing ourselves to other people. We're constantly bombarded with pictures in the media of, super lean and muscular physiques. And it's natural to internalize that, especially, again, there are a number of factors that go into this, but if you've had the types of interpersonal relationships where appearance has been at the forefront, so people commenting on how you look either positively or negatively, because again, sometimes compliments may also reinforce the idea that it's important to look a certain way, then someone's maybe at a high risk of objectifying themselves. So learning that, well, hang on a minute, other people seem to care about how I look. Perhaps it's important for me to care about how I look. The look that I'm going for is the one that seems to be the most common, the one that's associated with success, which currently seems to be the rise of the muscular and lean ideal. And this has been common for men, you know, trying to achieve that big, muscular, strong, masculine, quote unquote, appearance. And now we're also seeing that for more women as well, and not just wanting to be, say, fashion model slim, but actually with the rise of fitness advertising, we're seeing the internalization of the muscular and lean ideal. So then it's about, okay, why does this person want to look this way? And when it gets down to the core of it, we often see that people hold certain appearance assumptions. You know, when I look a certain way, then I will be happy. Then my partner will find me attractive. Then I will be more successful. I will have more friends. And we find that that's not necessarily what happens. And if we're not targeting the cognitions behind that, then we're not necessarily able to change how someone feels about themselves or the behaviors that they're engaging in. If someone thinks it's extremely important to tightly control how they look, then they're more at risk of developing pathological eating behaviors because they're trying to tightly monitor and control their appearance. And when someone does that, because food is such a huge part of our culture, our ability to socialize with other people, the way that we show people that we care about them, trying to tightly control that and your exercise as well can really have a huge impact on your life. You know, I can't come out tonight because I must get this workout in, or I haven't completed my steps for the day, let me just go outside now and walk around the block, you know, just to be able to do that. It takes up a lot of headspace as well, and we see that for some people who do have a negative body image, that it leads to the marginalization of other areas of life. So someone's concerns about their shape and weight become so important that they forget about everything else that's important to them. And this is where we really do see the negative effects there, when it's really important for someone to look a certain way and their self-worth is tied up in that. That can really begin to impact their life. And that's kind of the paradox there, is that we're doing these things to try and improve how we feel, and we end up making ourselves feel worse.
Man, so I am glad that I've done a significant amount of personal development over the last decade or so, because 20-year-old me would have been, my 20-year-old ego-driven, externally focused Josh would be in pain right now, because like I was textbook just across the board orthorexia. I literally went years without going out with my friends. I was always introverted, so that was a little bit easy for me, but it was always being ran through the filter of, is this going to help my physique or is this going to hurt my physique? And ironically, that led me to doing quite a bit of things that would be counterproductive. I was entirely focused on having abs. That was my goal for years and years. And like I said, ironically, it led me to be doing things that kept me from gaining muscle, because I would always be restricting calories. And then I would go through the cycle of barely gaining any muscle and then losing it because I was dieting, because I added a little bit of body fat. And it's been a lot of work, because it's something that I identified so closely with. I mean, you're right. People wanting to praise you and compliment you, probably meaning well more often than not. But when you start hearing that over and over again, you start identifying with, this is where my value lies. And I mean, humans have such monkey brains that it's not surprising that these things rule us, but we have to kind of take a step back and think about whether or not it's actually useful for us. You mentioned fitness advertising, and I would like to go into that quite a bit, but I mean, the extremes of human physique are used for leverage for selling things, getting more followers, things like that. And no doubt it's been this way. If you learn about like the history of the fitness industry, there's always been these kind of manipulative practices. But what role has social media played in that getting worse? And then how are these extremes kind of impacting everyday people?
Yeah, social media can have a huge impact on someone's body image. And we're seeing now, again, that we have the ability to portray our best sides and enhance our features in such a way that people are now comparing themselves to, I don't want to say unrealistic ideals, because that is something that is one of the arguments that, oh, we're portraying these unrealistic bodies, whereas sometimes these bodies are realistic for certain people. But my question would be, whether or not these bodies are desirable for a person, in the sense that, do you want to live a lifestyle, do you want to do what it takes, again, quote unquote, to achieve that physique? And that really then gets to the question of, what do you think this physique is going to get you, and how would you like to live your life? So we're sort of asking those philosophical questions now, like, what really is important to you? What are your values, and where does your health and fitness come into that? But yeah, we're seeing, I guess, what I think one of the problems is that we're portraying these physiques as if they're common, whereas really they're not. When you're looking at the general population at large, the fitness physiques are just a small portion of that, but we come to view those as normal and, again, desirable. And when we're comparing ourselves to people that we feel similar to, so maybe a similar age, similar gender, oh, this person's also into fitness, so am I. We share something in common. Why can I not achieve the same thing that they can achieve? Those are the types of comparisons that feed into the idea that, maybe I should be looking like this, without really answering the question of, what do you want from yourself and from your life, and why do you want these things? So I think that puts a bit of responsibility on us as fitness professionals into how we portray ourselves online. What are we trying to help people with? I don't view myself as helping people to attain physiques, even though that may be part of the service. I view my goal as being able to help someone determine what it is that they want, and to improve their physical and psychological well-being. And oftentimes that's not a focus on physique at all, although we're focusing on the behaviors, so someone's physique may change as a result of that, but the psychological changes don't necessarily correlate with that. So I think really thinking about, how should I portray myself online, we have to first ask yourself, well, what am I trying to help someone do? And for me, the framework of Flourishing Health has been really helpful for me to kind of position myself in that way. It's like, oh, okay, I understand now what I want someone to work towards, or what I think seems to be important, not based on my own, beliefs, although everything will be viewed, interpreted through a certain lens, but based on what the scientific literature suggests contributes to healthy physical and psychological functioning. So yeah, that's kind of been my way of looking at, or how do I portray myself online? And I think as well for our own well-being. So I've mentored a number of coaches now, and coached a number of coaches for their own body image. And I've seen that it's very common for people to put pressure on themselves to look a certain way, because they have to look the part if they're going to help people improve their physiques. So I think knowing that, for me, I don't want to create a rod for my own back by portraying myself, like by using my body to promote my services, because then that, I think, makes it more difficult for you to disassociate who you are from how you look if you're using your body to all the time. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong, again, inherently, for showing your displaying your physique from time to time, but thinking about your intentions behind that. Am I putting a picture of myself out there because it makes me feel good, or am I doing it because it supports something that I'm trying to say in some way? Because again, I've worked with coaches who have felt pressure to change how they look, and again, that can feed into restrictive eating behaviors and body image issues, because they feel pressure to look a certain way for the industry. But how you look doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the work that you're doing, thinking about what is it that you want people to achieve. So putting your own protective mechanisms in place, I think, can be a good strategy, by not depending on your body to, like, even if you do like how you look, not depending on how on that to, I guess, promote your business or trying to get clients in, because again, it doesn't necessarily reflect your work or what you can help other people achieve.
Desirable. That was interesting, because I think that you have to really, really get somebody to see or realize yourself the opportunity cost for achieving a certain physique and or strength level or whatever it is, because at a certain point, and you don't know where this is going to be, you're going to really have to start sacrificing other aspects of life. And I don't believe that many people are told that right away or realize that right away. It really is kind of a in response to problems in their life, they realize they've kind of taken it too far. I had a few more questions about social media I wanted to get into, because you've really made me realize how much of a minefield that can be. But how can you get somebody to focus on these more internal things if they come to you and they're ready for weight loss, and you kind of identify that they're not ready based on a few things, but how can you get them to focus on something other than the number on the scale?
It's really difficult. I mean, I'm fortunate at this point in time that because I speak about these issues a lot, that a lot of people come to me knowing that they need to work on the psychological side of change. They likely still hold the desire to manipulate their body composition. It's way more difficult when someone wants to change their body and can't see that there's internal work to do. So for someone like that, it's about helping to develop that awareness of how the way that they think about themselves is affecting their behaviors. And it's very important and can be sometimes difficult as a coach not to try and get people to do things. So I may be able to see that, oh, hang on, I've identified that this person probably, because of the psychometric testing that I use when onboarding clients, like I will likely have a good idea about someone's body image, and I may be able to see from the testing and through our interactions that this person has a negative body image and holds their appearance. Their appearance plays an important role in their life, and I can see that that's detrimental because they're telling me they want this, they're engaging in certain behaviors like restrictive dieting and potentially overeating that is then damaging their physical health and their psychological well-being. And I can see that one of the probably most successful things that they could do would be to address their body image, but they can't see that, and they've learned that changing their physique is the answer. So it's about helping people to come to realize that, hang on a minute, the behaviors that I'm engaging in aren't making me feel any better. And the reason that I'm engaging in those behaviors is because I hold certain beliefs and assumptions. And potentially it's those beliefs and assumptions that I have to question in order to change my behavior. But that can take a long time to help develop that awareness, because we're undoing a lot of prior learning. So I think it takes a lot of compassion to understand what someone's going through and being able to empathize with their experience. Also curiosity, because non-judgmental curiosity, I would add, because it's really about understanding, there's a very good reason as to why someone would be behaving detrimentally, because we don't want to cause harm to ourselves. So if we're doing such a thing, why is that the case? There's a strong reason behind that. Why does this person believe that changing their body is the way to go, even when they can see that their urge to restrict their intake is actually making them feel worse? Why is that the case? And oftentimes, when someone is thinking about the fact that their restriction is driving overeating, they'll tell themselves, well, I'm just not disciplined enough, I just need more discipline, I'm a failure because I can't achieve this thing that I should be able to achieve. So then it's about unpicking those beliefs as well. So I think that the first step is understanding why someone is behaving the way that they are and helping them to understand that themselves, but also painting a strong picture of what we can aim towards, because most people aren't aware that you can change your thoughts, you can change how you feel, and then you can change how you're behaving. But I think that by talking about these things, that's probably one of the most helpful things that we can do, is raise awareness of, did you know that body image is actually a thing? A positive body image is actually a thing. You can have that and figure out how to change your physique, if that still is something you want to do. But arguably we need to do that internal work first, or at least alongside, what it is that we're currently doing, so that you can be in a position to make informed choices, healthy choices for you. So I think just, as I say, raising that awareness and drawing insight from a client would be the first step.
And getting them to realize that it will be a long process, I think, would be important as well, right? Because I still find myself comparing myself to other people for aesthetic purposes, and it's just absolutely like there's always going to be somebody bigger, there's always going to be somebody that's stronger, and you have to just constantly work to overcome those biases. And I don't know, depending on how long they've been ingrained. I mean, what we know about neuroplasticity, it's like there is a biological reason why you have these thought patterns, and you have to work to overcome those thought patterns consciously. And then over time, hopefully they'll become less of a conscious effort and a little bit more unconscious or non-conscious. One more question on this kind of specifically. How can body image impact athletes, and specific, probably physique athletes more often than not? Do you see it impacting non-physique athletes, just general athletes?
Yeah, totally. So the thing is with athletic bodies, I actually did a podcast recently with Fionn Davies, who's an elite BJJ competitor.
I listened to it.
Yeah,
It was
talking about
good.
her experience with her body image. And what we find is that a lot of athletes develop, due to the nature of their physical training, they may develop what we would call an athletic body type, so potentially a muscular body type, and speaking more so now to the female athletes. But sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect between this athletic body that's rewarded during the physical training and athletic performance, that then becomes something that impedes, or I guess is viewed differently in social situations. So for example, with Fionn, one of the body parts that she would get a lot of comments on were her arms, that were quite muscular and strong, and they would potentially come in handy for her jiu-jitsu performance and be complimented, or you're so strong, whereas in social occasions it became something a little bit different. So we see a kind of disconnect that some athletes may experience between their body that they respect for what it can do through their training, versus then the physical appearance, which may not match up to these social norms. So that can be quite difficult for some athletes, and particularly for weight cutting sports or physique competitors. So wherever the body is at the forefront, those are the types of athletes that are at a higher risk of developing pathological eating behaviors. So I think it's particularly important to consider body image in those contexts as well. What's another thing that I've noticed just through my experience of working with people is that when I talk about a negative body image, there's two main components. So that would be the appearance evaluation. So whether or not someone's satisfied or dissatisfied with certain aspects of their appearance, but also the salience that the appearance plays in someone's life. So how important is it to look a certain way? And that's the real crucial factor. So I've worked with people who actually are satisfied with their appearance, but it's such an important part of who they are that we're still seeing the negative impacts that can have, because they go to such lengths to tightly control how they look. And we know that for some athletes, that actually potentially growing muscle would enhance their performance, or for a physique competitor, that may be a part of the achieving better results. They have to go through this phase, but they're so concerned about their tightly controlling their appearance that they're afraid to fuel themselves properly for their performance, or to go through that muscle growth phase that may require a bit of fat gain as well. So we can see that holds them back from their sport in that sense. And a positive body image is distinct from a negative body image in the sense that I've been able to identify individuals who have a high degree of appearance satisfaction, but it's an important part of who they are, and then they're not showing respect and appreciation for their body. So it can be the case where someone enjoys how they look, they feel that they get a lot of their self-worth from that. So then they go to extreme lengths to tightly control that, and then they're scared to take a rest day because of the impact that that may have on their physique. They are looking at their performance in terms of calorie burn, for example. They're scared to fuel themselves properly because they don't want to eat additional calories. So even though someone may be satisfied with their athletic physique, it still has a negative impact on their overall physical and psychological well-being. That's something that I've been able to see play out a lot in practice.
Again, you've basically just described to me 5-10 years ago, because I absolutely made those decisions that ended up being counterproductive. And the next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is going to probably take a little bit, can we start tackling just examples of how what we post on social media can impact other people in a negative way? And oftentimes I've learned this from you, it may not be obvious at all. There's going to be the obvious ones, which we could point out first because they probably won't take much time, but then the not so obvious ones, things that we think may be benign but are anything but.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't realize just how much reach our social media posts can have. And that's really one of the main things, is that we don't know who is looking at our posts. You've got young children on social media, but also peers and people like all over the world. And when we're posting physiques or even certain messaging, we have to just be aware of how that may be interpreted. So I think that's one thing that, I mean, there's responsibility that comes with that, but also you've then got the other question of, well, what can I don't think we can always prevent harm from occurring, because again, that also puts pressure on ourselves. And I've spoken to a number of coaches who are like, I don't even know what to post online anymore because I'm scared to do a post because I don't want to cause any harm. So I think that operating with pure intentions and then just being considerate, and we all make mistakes as well. So actually, one of the mistakes that I made recently is I've created a webinar series on body image that was predominantly designed for coaches to help coach their clients through body image and reduce negative body image and promote a positive body image. And I use an image of myself on the front, and it was just me standing against a barbell, and you could see a little bit of stomach definition. This is a photo. I don't have many photos of myself. So this is one that was taken a couple of years ago, and I didn't think too much of it. But when we sent out an email that had that image on it, we actually got a response from someone saying the fact that you're using skinny models to promote your products is feeding into the problem. And clearly this was someone who was hit pretty hard with that image. And I had to sort of take a step back and think, oh crap, like, I have to be really considerate of what I'm using. I didn't think anything of it. I don't even think my physique looks that impressive in that picture, but that's just my interpretation, and how that person feels is really valid. And I have to be aware of that. So I ended up changing. I just put a picture of my face on the thing instead, because again, I was like, I'm not even a model. Like, well, where is this coming from? But, you have to be open, I think, to listening to how people feel, and then being just cognizant of that. So yeah, I just changed the image that I was using, apologized for how that image made that person feel. Didn't really think that I would get that. Wasn't aware that would be some of the response that I would be causing. So yeah, just having compassion for yourself as well, I think, is important. Knowing that, okay, as long as you're trying to do your best and listening when people do respond, cool, making changes based on that, and doing what you can. And that's one thing that, yeah, I learned recently. So I think it's not about getting it right all the time, but just knowing what you're trying to work towards, and then taking comments like that on board if you do happen to make those mistakes.
You're absolutely not going to be right all the time, I think. In fact, you posted today letting yourself make mistakes, and I'd love to do a podcast entirely focused on that, because that's been a huge aspect to changing my mindset. So that could go real in depth, but I guess basically you want to have pure intentions, and you want to understand that everybody that's viewing your content is going to have their own perception. They're going to filter that through all of their history, all of their biases, everything, and it's going to come out the other end and may impact them in a way that you don't predict. Kind of perfectly moving on to the next one. As health and fitness professionals, how can we reduce the harm we are causing, not on social media? We've touched on that quite a bit already, but just in our interactions. How can we compliment? How can we praise people without reinforcing these externally focused ideas?
I think we've got to be really careful of the types of comments that we make on people's appearances. So it can be really easy to be drawn to rewarding someone's weight loss if we're working with a client, or even commenting on our friends and our family, you know, if they're going through their own fitness journey, complimenting the changes in their physique, I think is something that we need to watch out for, because what we can be doing through our compliments is just reinforcing the idea that it is that your appearance matters, which you want to ideally move away from. So I think more so complimenting someone's strengths, in the sense that, you know, if someone happens to be losing weight and that's something that they're working towards, oh, you're so committed to your goals, that can be a compliment that we can give. Or you're really focused, you really know what matters to you, you know, things like that. Or you look happy today, you're really strong. You know, these types of compliments are more so complimenting the factors that someone has, I guess, control over, which is one thing. But also we're taking away the focus on appearance, because again, it really is that when we base our self-worth on how we look, that's when we see some of the higher risk of developing those pathological behaviors. So I think really focusing on the person and not just the physique is really important. And when you do that, it becomes quite easy to compliment other things, because those are the things that stand out to you. You know, you barely notice that. I mean, you'll be aware of how someone's changing physically, but it really is the psychological side of things that matters the most. So I think drawing on those sorts of strengths and affirming those strengths is something that we could probably all do a lot more of. And why do we even need to compliment someone's physique? Like, we may think that we're just being nice, but there are so many other more meaningful things that we can compliment, that if we can do that, which has, you know, a lower risk attached to it, then why not just choose that option, which potentially could mean more to someone at the end of the day anyway.
It can mean a lot more. The affirming strengths is such a great idea. I mean, like, because you want them when they're down and they're you know, worn out and they feel like they can't go on, you want them to be like, you know what, you know, my coach said I was strong and I had you know, I was able to like pull myself up and keep going. But you don't want that. It's not gonna happen if you just tell them, you know, they look great, they, you know, their jeans look better, or whatever it is. There's so much more and so much deeper motivations for people. Did I remember correctly? Do you appraise people for their appearance at all? Do you ever compliment on appearance? I remember you saying it wasn't important to you, and that really resonated with me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, firstly, I think just through the way that I view people is like, I don't value appearance. So why would I compliment someone else's appearance? Because I don't think that means much. And that's really changed the way that I view people. So I would compliment people on things that I think are valuable. Again, it's just like character traits, like, oh, you're so strong, or you're such a nice person, you're so genuine. Those sorts of things are the things that come to mind, because those are the things that I focus on. And I came across a paper that explained the phenomena of complementary weightism. And that kind of changed my perspective as well, about how these appearance compliments can actually increase someone's appearance dissatisfaction. So it's like, you think you're doing something nice for someone, whereas actually you may be causing harm. And that's not to say that complimenting someone on their appearance is always harmful, you know, and not everyone's going to interpret those things in the same way. But the fact is that you don't know how someone's going to take it. So why take the risk? And this is something that I thought about myself, because even just being here in Bali, people comment on my appearance all of the time. Like, every single day I'll get a compliment or just a comment on how I look. And to me, I'm like, damn, I have to be careful about taking that on board, because again, if I learn that, oh, everyone likes it when you have abs, like what does that mean for me? That I'm going to start paying more attention to my abs, and I don't really want to be doing that. So I've had to put a little bit of a filter in place where I just let those things go over my head, and I'm like, thanks, move on. I just all could laugh and change the conversation, because it's like, I don't really think that that's something that we should be focusing on. I understand why people do it, but I don't want to associate that with feeling good, and I don't want to learn that that's important. So I think that's another thing as well, is putting your own filters in place and having to constantly reorient your attention to the things that do matter, because it's likely that you will get drawn away into believing or being drawn down that path where, hey, people care about this. It's like, cool, reframe, what do you care about, what's important to you? So yeah, I think about the things that are important to me and try and focus on that in other people as well. And also, I think another thing that ties into having a positive body image is conceptualizing beauty broadly. And I think, like, we often think about our bodies as being attractive, but I think people are attractive, which has been really interesting for me to reflect on, even in like the types of relationships that I'll have, because I've noticed that for me, attraction builds slowly, and I'm not attracted to people initially for how they look, but actually it's who they are that really becomes attractive to me over time. And the same thing goes for like friendships as well. Like, what draws you to a friend? You probably don't care about how your friends look. There are other qualities about them that are important to you. And if those are the things that truly matter, why not bring those to the forefront? So yeah, just thinking about how you relate to other people, what you perceive to be attractive, like happiness, and what does happiness look like when someone's smiling, when someone's laughing. Those are the sorts of things that we should be, I guess, celebrating. And I think it's very easy to forget about that.
It almost seems like we really are doing our clients a disservice if we are focusing on those external, those temporary things, because at some point they're not going to look as good as they do when you told them they look good. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. That leads me to the next one again perfectly. What are some signs that you may be in a dysfunctional relationship with a coach or a trainer?
Oh, I think if you're feeling some kind of resistance, either with your client or from the client towards the trainer, if you, from a client's perspective, if you feel like you're not being heard, if you feel like you're not listened to, if you're not being understood, if your needs aren't met, then that's a huge sign. And I think part of the problem is that clients can blame themselves. Again, I'm not getting the results that I'm expecting because I'm not good enough. I need more discipline. I'm not putting the work in. From a coach's perspective, if you feel like you don't understand your client, that would be a huge sign. Or if you feel like you're trying to get your client to do something, that's a warning sign as well, because it's about coming together and meeting someone where they're at, but understanding where they're at for a start, and understanding what they want. And if at any point you feel like, I don't understand why they're behaving in this way, or they seem to not want to do what I think would be good for them, then it's about taking a step back and thinking about, why is there that disconnect? Why is there resistance? I mean, if you feel resistance, then really examining that and thinking about, what kind of relationship do I have with this person? Because it's not about forcing people into making the changes that you think would be good for them, but about listening to them to find out what they think would be good for them, and being able to guide them in the direction they want to go. So yeah, anytime there's a resistance, that's a huge sign that there may be some work to do there.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's I think a big step would be coaches and trainers having a little bit more exclusionary criteria as well, finding out in the beginning if it's even going to be a good relationship, because it is a relationship. Especially, I mean, I've had clients that trained with me for years, and it really became a relationship. And those are, looking back, those are kind of the people that had the most success with me, because they were able to stick around for the longest, and for whatever reason, we just hit it off. Moving away from the client and coach relationship a little bit, can you give us just a few practical tips for just a normal person not working with a professional they want to start improving their body image. They may not be able to work with a professional. They want to start developing their health, improving their health, their relationship with food, body image, all of it.
Yeah, so I think like one of the biggest things is to firstly just be aware of how your body image is impacting your life, and being aware of the different triggers that may be in place, because again, a lot of people don't actually realize the extent to which their thoughts about their appearance can determine their feelings and their behaviors. So one example that I like to give is that feelings of fatness fluctuate. So if you think about how you feel about yourself, sometimes you'll feel pretty good, sometimes you won't feel as good. And the changes in how we feel about ourselves fluctuate far more frequently than our actual physical appearance changes. You know, you may look the same all week, but you'll notice that sometimes you feel good and sometimes you don't. So what is it that's changing how you feel if your body is actually pretty much staying the same? And I think keeping a body image diary is a really good way to start to develop that awareness. So how do you feel? What's just happened to make you feel this way? What thoughts are going through your head at this moment in time? And how are you behaving as a consequence? A common example may be I stepped on the scale and saw a number that I wasn't happy with. So again, what thoughts are going through your head? Whoa, that number's way too high. I am disgusting. I need to restrict my diet to get that number back down. And then the behavior would be not eating even though they're hungry, for example, and then overeating as a result because they're so hungry at the end of the day and so restricted. So another example would be just compared myself to this person, or I just put on some clothes that didn't fit so well. And then we begin to see that, oh, okay, all of these other things are starting to impact how I feel about myself. So potentially, again, there's some work to do there. And why is it that these things influence how I feel? I think keeping track of the comparisons that you're making towards other people is really important. Why are you comparing your physique to others? What parts of your body are you focusing on? Because we find that people seem to magnify they focus on the parts that they don't like and forget about the parts that they don't mind. And when they're comparing themselves to other people, what they don't realize is that they're actually objectifying that other person as well, because we're looking at them at just their bodies and failing to think about who they are as a person. So asking yourself, you know, why am I even comparing myself to these people, and how does that make me feel, and what about who they are and who I am? Another thing to really be aware of is how frequently you check your appearance, because these are things that we do somewhat subconsciously, you know, looking at ourselves in the mirror, stepping on the scale, just constantly being aware, pinching certain parts of our body. You know, how frequently are you doing that? Because again, that can reinforce the idea that it's important to tightly control how you look. And some people can check their body. I think they'd be alarmed to realize how frequently they check their body. So that could be another thing to focus on, is actually reducing the frequency of checking yourselves. And if you're looking at yourself multiple times throughout the day, asking yourself, what am I looking to find here? Why am I checking myself? You know, and this could work both ways. It could be that you're looking for a pick-me-up because you like how you look, so like flexing in the mirror, but why do you need a pick-me-up in the first place? So understanding, how are you actually feeling right now, and what are these body checking behaviors, you know, doing for you? And that could be one thing to consider. Another thing could be to focus on your appreciation of what your body does for you. And I don't just mean your physical capabilities, because when we say this, people are like, yeah, I really love that I'm strong in the gym and all these things that I can do with my performance. That's great, but that's just one tiny aspect of your body's functions. What about focusing on your senses? You know, the amazing sights that you've been able to see, the fact that you can see your partner's face light up when you tell them that you love them because of the fact that you have eyes. You know, what about the music that you can listen to? What about the way that your body helps you to communicate with other people? So being able to hug someone, being a shoulder to cry on, being able to kiss someone. If you didn't have a body, you wouldn't be able to perform these functions. And what would life be if you didn't have that? We can be grateful for all of these things. And I think just treating your body the way that you want to feel is really important. So treating your body like how you would treat someone that you respect, or how you would treat someone that you love. If you wouldn't talk to your friend or your child or your partner the way that you talk to yourself, why is that the case? Probably because it wouldn't make them feel so good. So why do we not treat ourselves with the same amount of love and respect that we treat other people that we care about? Because I think one of the hesitations that people have towards developing a positive body image is that they feel like they would become complacent, they would go easy on themselves, they would let themselves go. Whereas actually it's about treating yourself with respect, which means, exercising, it means making nutrient dense food choices, but it also means respecting yourself for who you are and not just how you look. So those are just some quick things off the top of my head, are some of the main things that I think would be helpful. But I think if you're really struggling or really want to help your clients with that, then going through the body image webinar series would be helpful, because that goes into far more context, because it can be more difficult to put these things into practice. Simply knowing what to do is the start, but putting it into practice is a different thing. It does require a lot of ongoing work for some people.
Yeah, I think within ourselves, the becoming aware is the biggest thing for a lot of aspects in life, because we start to do a lot of stuff just unconsciously. And I was thinking about this the other day, if we were just completely logical, we would see that those changes in feelings and how we feel about ourselves, changes in body image, and see those fluctuations and be like, okay, reality is I haven't changed at all. Why do I feel differently? Okay, this is just a cyclical thing that's going to happen. But we do end up taking things for granted. Like you said, the sites that you've been able to see, the places that you've been. I'm going for a long hike with my dog, and I've been preparing myself physically to do that. And that's just another way to express my appreciation for my body, outside of just the aesthetic. And you've already touched a little bit on this, but can you give us just a couple more examples of coaches and trainers that just realized now that the old authoritarian way of doing things may not be the most effective? What are some first steps for them?
I think reading about motivational interviewing is something that everyone should do, and even watching it in play, but to actually put it into practice, genuinely listening to your client, not assuming that you know what's best, I think is a huge perspective shift, because most coaches view themselves as experts. This person is paying me for my advice, therefore I should just tell them what to do. But that doesn't necessarily work in practice. And when people have a choice and they're able to explore their own options, that's when they make the choices that are beneficial to them. Seeing yourself as a guide rather than a dictator, I think, is really helpful. One analogy that I like to use is viewing yourself like a gardener. So a gardener can't force the plants to grow. All a gardener does is tending to the soil, creating the conditions that allow for the plants to grow. And that's what we're doing. We're creating the conditions that allow a client to grow. So we can't do that by forcing advice down their throat and telling them what they should do. We can do that by asking them what they want to achieve, where they think would be a good place to start. And if they're stuck, asking, would you mind if I provided you with some advice or some information? And then seeing what they think of that information once you provided it to them. So really listening to your client, I think, is the main thing. And really knowing that you don't know what's best for someone. They have their own experiences. They know what matters to them. You know how physiology works or biology. You understand that, but you don't know that person necessarily, especially when you just started working with them. So your goal is to know who you're working with, to relate to who you're working with, to empathize with them, to understand them, and then figure out what they should do from there. And that comes from them telling you and you listening to that. So I think understanding that is a huge perspective shift. And when you're coming at it from the perspective that I don't know what this person wants, I don't know what's best for them, you're forced to ask open questions and to actively listen, and to collaborate with them on the change. So understanding your role in that sense, I think, is a good place to start.
That's absolutely been one of the biggest paradigm shifts for me. Just taking the role of a guide a little bit more. Something again I learned from y'all, the idea that, or the thought that if the voices in your head are your own, that may be an issue. And I have caught myself so many times, because you are listening, quote unquote, but you're not actively listening. You're thinking about how you want to respond. And that's been a great tool for podcasting, for talking to people like yourself, but also for talking to people just generally. One more before you, I know time's running out here, so I want to get to this one. And I'm sure that you've answered it already, but if you could just give us a short summary or whatever pops in your head, however you want to answer it. How do you feel, in your own opinion, that the industry can improve, the health and fitness industries?
I feel quite positive about the direction that it's going in. I think this is partly due to the work that Gabrielle and I have been doing, and seeing that there are a huge number of coaches that feel the same way. And I think that we're seeing, or I feel like we're at the stage of identifying what's important and then raising awareness of that, and then getting people together to help facilitate that shift. Like, I think it is occurring, which is a great thing. And we're understanding that stigma is really important, and we need to be aware of that. We're understanding that communication is important, psychology is important, and we're not equipped, through our qualifications, or our initial qualifications don't prepare us well to deal with all of those things. So I'm quite positive about the direction that I hope that the industry is going in. But the industry is so big, that is the only thing. So I think that all that we can do is focus on our own contributions and our own, I guess, performance, and the work that we're doing, and just continuing to move in that direction. But I think that comes from being able to listen, to being able to communicate across divides as well, because we see huge divides in the industry. And I think I like to believe that the majority of people have good intentions, and it's just about how do we actually best help people. So I think continuing to communicate and collaborate with people such as yourself, and anytime that we see people doing good, to celebrate that, because that's another thing as well. It can become competitive. I don't really understand, I guess I'm not really sure where that comes from, where I think if you identify that someone shares similar values and is trying to achieve similar thing, collaborating with that person, coming together, promoting them, that's how we're going to help to achieve the greatest good, I think. So I do feel quite positive about the direction that it's going in, and excited to see where it goes. And I think just focusing on what you're doing is probably the best way to help move in that direction.
It absolutely takes a lot of optimism. And I don't think that y'all would be doing what you're doing if you didn't think that the industry and the people within it could change. Because it'd be like banging your head against the wall, I'm sure. But this was awesome. We're going to probably listen to this over and over again just to catch everything that we can from it. And we'd love to have you on again sometime in the future to talk about all kinds of things. But it was good talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate all the work that you're doing as well, and looking forward to what's to come in the future.